The email arrived on the hottest day of spring, and by the end of summer, the entire HOA board would regret sending it. Ethan Carter had spent months preparing for the solar installation on his roof. The plan was simple: lower his electricity bill, make his home more energy efficient, and finally stop worrying about the rising cost of power every summer. His contractor had already inspected the roof. The permits were ready. The installation date was scheduled for the first week of June. Everything was perfectly planned, until a letter from the HOA appeared in his mailbox. At first, Ethan assumed it was just routine paperwork. The neighborhood association often sent reminders about landscaping or garbage pickup schedules. But when he opened the envelope, the message inside made him stop cold. Solar panel installations are not permitted under HOA community aesthetic rules. Ethan read the sentence twice, then a third time. It didn't make sense. Many homes across the state already had solar panels. Energy companies were encouraging it. Even the state government offered tax credits to homeowners who installed them, yet somehow, his HOA believed they could simply ban them. Ethan leaned back in his chair, thinking carefully. He wasn't the type of neighbor who enjoyed arguments, but he also wasn't someone who gave up easily, especially when he knew something the HOA board clearly didn't. And when summer arrived, that small detail would change everything. 2 days later, Ethan attended the HOA meeting. The community clubhouse was already half full when he arrived. Several neighbors sat quietly while the board members reviewed notes at the front table. At the center sat Linda Pierce, the HOA president. She had a reputation for being extremely strict about neighborhood appearance: uniform lawns, matching fences, approved paint colors. Nothing escaped her attention. When the meeting opened for homeowner comments, Ethan raised his hand. "I received a notice about my solar panels," he said calmly. Linda adjusted her glasses. "Yes," she replied. "Solar installations are not allowed in this community." Ethan kept his voice polite. "Could you explain why?" Linda gestured toward a document. "The board voted to prohibit them because they disrupt the visual harmony of the neighborhood." A few neighbors shifted in their seats. Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand the concern," he said. Then he added one simple sentence: "But state law says you can't ban them." The room fell silent. Linda's smile tightened. "Our HOA guidelines apply to all properties here." Ethan didn't argue further. He simply thanked the board and walked out of the meeting, because he knew the real conversation was only just beginning. The following week, the HOA sent Ethan a formal violation notice. It warned that installing solar panels would result in daily fines. Most homeowners might have backed down at that point, but Ethan did something different. He opened his laptop and began reading through the state energy code. It didn't take long to find what he was looking for. Several years earlier, the state legislature had passed a law protecting homeowners' rights to install solar energy systems. The wording was clear: HOAs could suggest placement guidelines, but they could not prohibit solar panels entirely. Ethan printed the section of the law and highlighted the key lines. Then he scheduled the installation. By early June, the solar company arrived with trucks and equipment. Neighbors watched curiously as panels were lifted onto Ethan's roof. By sunset, the system was fully installed, and within 24 hours, another letter from the HOA arrived. This time, the tone was much more serious, but the next move Ethan made would change the entire neighborhood. The HOA fines began the following week: $100 per day. According to the notice, Ethan had violated community design rules. Linda and the board believed the pressure would force him to remove the panels quickly. Instead, Ethan remained completely calm. He allowed the fines to accumulate for several days. Then he mailed a certified letter to the HOA office. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a copy of the state's solar protection law. The second was a legal opinion from an energy attorney, and the third was something the HOA board had not expected at all: a formal complaint filed with the state housing authority. The letter explained that the HOA was attempting to enforce a rule that directly violated state law, and the penalties for doing so were significant. Several weeks later, the board received a notice of investigation. Suddenly, the confident tone of the HOA letters disappeared, but the real consequences were only just beginning. By mid-July, the investigation was underway. State officials requested copies of the HOA rules, meeting minutes, and violation notices. The board members grew nervous. During an emergency meeting, Linda tried to defend the decision. "We were protecting neighborhood standards," she insisted, but the documents told a different story. Emails revealed that the board had ignored legal advice warning them about the solar law. They had voted to ban the panels anyway. Now the state housing authority had questions, serious questions. Within days, the HOA received another letter. This one explained that enforcing illegal restrictions could result in fines against the association itself. For the first time, the board realized the situation had turned against them, and Ethan still hadn't made his final move. Late in July, the HOA announced a special community meeting. Nearly every homeowner attended. The board looked noticeably less confident than usual. Linda cleared her throat before speaking. After reviewing state regulations, she began carefully. The HOA will be updating its solar policy. Murmurs spread across the room. The new rule allowed homeowners to install solar panels as long as they followed basic placement guidelines. In other words, the ban was gone. Ethan sat quietly in the back row. He didn't smile, he didn't say a word, but everyone in the room understood exactly what had happened. One homeowner had challenged the rule, and the entire HOA had been forced to change. Still, the story wasn't quite finished yet, because the final twist would arrive only a few weeks later. In August, the investigation officially closed. The State Housing Authority issued a final notice to the HOA board. The association was ordered to withdraw all fines issued against Ethan. In addition, the board was required to update its community guidelines to comply with state solar protection laws. For Ethan, the result was simple: his solar panels stayed, his electric bill dropped, and the entire neighborhood now had the freedom to install solar systems if they wanted. But perhaps the biggest change was something less visible. From that point forward, the HOA board became far more careful before creating new restrictions, because one homeowner had proven that rules only work when they follow the law. And sometimes the quietest neighbor on the street is the one who understands the system best, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.